If you want to get better as an artist, learning to critique your own work is super important. So in this video, I want to show you exactly how I critique my paintings as a professional artist. And back here, I have a painting that I'm making of my cat, Mr. Samadhi. So the first thing I do when I start to think about my work and critique it, I think about the purpose of the painting. And so the purpose of this painting is for me to make a birthday present for myself, honestly. I don't plan on selling this piece ever. Alongside that, I also am trying to do something in this piece that I have never done before. I'm using a really muted background along with his really bright colors. If you're new to my channel and you've never seen my work before, it is characterized by lots of color. And so you can see the paintings up here behind this one, and they are very colorful. Now this piece here too is also very colorful in the cat, but you can see the background is more muted. And in the past, I've had a really difficult time achieving this. And so I knew I was setting myself up for a difficult painting because it's hard when you are doing so much bright color to then have a lot of muted colors in there. Sometimes to get the balance of that is difficult. Knowing the purpose of your piece is super important. So don't skip this step, because how you evaluate your painting from here on out needs to all go around that purpose and whether or not you are achieving it. The first thing I like to evaluate in my work is color. And that's because color is not only my favorite part of painting, but it's also a really big characteristic of my work. And so when I look at color, I want to see the color play and see if there are colors bouncing around on different parts of the piece, if the color flows together well, and if the color makes me feel like it is making me go into the piece more, or if there's something with the color that's like not working right. And for me in this piece, I love how the color works. It's actually working out really well to have the muted tones in the background with the more really bright saturated colors in the foreground and in him. But one of the things that I kind of still feel awkward about is the use of the gray with all of the bright colors, just because I'm not used to doing this. And so I'm not 100% sure I like it, but it's not necessarily bad. I think that I have to just continue on with the painting and see how it's going to be in the end. But as an initial critique of this step in the process, since I'm about 3/4 of the way through the painting, I don't think I'm going to change it, but I'm not 100% sure if I will really love it in the end. We'll see. So when you're evaluating your use of color in your piece, you might look into whether or not you feel like it is aligning with your color scheme that you chose to begin with, whether the colors matches the figure that you are painting. For example, if you're painting a landscape, do the greens look like the green in the landscape that you were trying to depict? Or does the color of the fur of the animal, for instance, match the color of the fur that you were trying to depict? For me, I don't match colors, and so I evaluate color in a more abstract way, but you can evaluate it in a very literal way. And then if it's not matching, you could try to figure out how to mix colors that will match, and this transitions us into likeness. Now, if you are making an abstract painting, you might not be painting a likeness. You're not trying to match it to a reference photo, but you are painting a feeling, an emotion, an experience, an intuitive moment in time. And so what I would like to say on that is that if you are painting abstracts, try to see if your abstract matches those intentions or feelings that you wanted for the piece. But when it comes to painting something that's representational, it's really easy to see if you are making a good likeness. You can look at my reference photo I have back here, and then you can see my cat, Mr. Samadhi. Now you can see that it looks a whole lot like him. Obviously the colors are different because that's how my work is, but it looks so much like him. Now I like to see how I could improve his likeness, and that's a big thing for me. So I always look at it with a really critical eye. I look at him and then I look at the photo back and forth so many times. And one of the things that I'm identifying at this stage is that this part of his arm feels a little fatter on the painting than it does in the photo. And so what I need to do is actually bring in this edge just slightly here, but I also need to augment the shadows of these areas so that it feels more angular and not quite so round, because his bone of his arm is under here. And so right now it just feels kind of like a marshmallow lump of skin or something over it. You're not really seeing the bone delineated. And so what I need to do is make it look a little more shaded around here so that you can kind of see the highlight of that bone a little bit more, because in the photo it has that. The other thing that I don't really like about the likeness is that I don't think I'm capturing the paw quite right yet. The paws just don't have the pizzazz that I want them to, and I don't know how to describe it better than that, but they are a major focal point. Now, I really like how this paw is sitting out in front of his leg there in the back, and you can feel like it's tucked under, but this paw just isn't quite there yet. The other thing about the likeness isn't about him, but it's about the pillow. I have been seriously struggling with this pillow. Oh my gosh. And I don't do pillows or fabric very well. I don't have a lot of practice in that because I'm an animal artist. I do a lot of headshots. And so to have him painted on a realistic pillow is tough. You can see that the pillow looks really full. And the pillow in the photo has like a pillowcase on it, and it looks like it's more flat. There's more flowing material around it. And so you can tell this isn't quite right yet, but I'm trying and I'm working on it. And so as you see, I'm looking at my painting with a really critical eye. Now, if you look at your work that way and you start feeling negative about it, like bad about it, like, oh, there's all these problems and how am I going to fix all these things? Just fix one at a time, and you don't have to fix them all when the piece is completed. You could say, hey, it's good enough, because sometimes as artists, we're super critical of our work, but the viewer doesn't see all of that stuff. Like, I was picking out all these things about my piece, and you were probably looking at it like, hey, that's beautiful. It looks finished to me. Well, except for the fact that there aren't whiskers yet. But I put those on last, so I'm not really critiquing that aspect of it. But the thing is that you often look at your work in a harsher eye than what viewers will. So always keep that in mind as you're self-critiquing, but be really harsh on yourself. That's what I do. I mean, I'm picking out little tiny things in here that really probably don't matter to most viewers, but I'm trying to push my skills further. And by doing that, I need to look at all the details, and I need to be hard on myself. I need to be honest about it. And if it's not working, I need to be able to say that to myself. I don't have to necessarily say it to everyone else about the piece, but I need to know that for myself so that I can improve. The next important thing is contrast in value. And so that means how much light and how much dark there is in the piece. What I like to make sure in my work is that there's always some really dark areas and some really light areas. That simplifies it down to the most basic concepts. And so I have some really dark areas and I have some much lighter areas. So I think I have a good balance of contrast in this piece. Next is variety in mark making. It's super important in a painting to have a lot of variety, because the more variety there is, the more interesting it looks. And you want your work to have life, to have feeling, to show you as an artist. And variety of mark making is one really good way to do that. And so I like the way my piece has a lot of variety in here versus the way these areas look. They're a little bit more open, but I think the variety between this and this looks a little bit like it doesn't quite go together. And so I need to work on these paw areas more, because I haven't quite finished the definition of them to the level like that I have the face, for instance. And also I have a lot of variety in the way I've done these areas versus these areas, but I don't have as much variety in my mark making as I do in, for example, see this piece over here. This one, I have a lot of variety in the mark making. I love how that piece looks. It's one of my favorite ones that I've ever made. And so when looking at this one, you can see there is a lot of variety, but there's not quite as much looseness in the way I applied the paint. So if I can do anything in this piece before it's finished, I'd like to add a little bit more loose marks, because I think it gives a more personable feeling to it. You know, it shows me as the artist more. Next is creativity and originality. Now, some people don't think you need to focus on that, but I think it is really important if you want to be a professional artist, if you want to do this full time, to think about what you want your style to be and think about pushing the limits of that style. I see people who are professional artists even, who make a style of artwork for themselves, and they start selling it and then they just stay there. They stagnate. They don't push their boundaries. And that's a big pet peeve of mine. I'm always trying to push my boundaries. And that's why I'm trying to do something like this, because it is pushing my boundaries. And also, I've never seen any artist do anything quite like this. And so from an originality and creativity standpoint, I think this piece is definitely hitting the mark. But if you look at your work and you think, well, I've seen 10 other artists to do a similar thing, then I would start trying to brainstorm ways that you can make your artwork stand out from the crowd. Something that's different, whether it's a stylistic choice, a color choice, a compositional choice, something that makes your work different from everyone else's. So that way when people see your work, they're like, oh, I know who that artist is. I've seen their work before. And when people see my work, they're like, oh, that's a Crystal Cole. They know, because my work has a really unique perspective on animals. It's not only bright colors, but it's also realistic. The last aspect that I evaluate is the overall cohesiveness and flow. And I love how this piece is flowing. I mean, you look at the paw, your eye comes up here, it bounces around the face. It really is magnetic. You see his eyes, he feels relaxed. You want to reach out and touch his paw. The only thing that I don't think is flowing so well is the pillow. I don't really like the way it looks. It feels too stiff. It feels too big. He's not sinking down in it enough. So I need to work on that area of the painting. Well, I hope this video helped you learn how to self-critique your own art. If you'd like to learn more acrylic painting tips, check out this playlist. I have over 20 videos in there showing you exactly how to paint, all of the basic skills that you need to do to be able to paint anything. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.